And so we have these different theoretical perspectives, but none of them actually suggests that money or anything else is a universal measure of value. That isn't the goal. The goal of these different theories of economics aren't to tell us what value is. They're suggesting that sociocultural relationships and processes play a big part in creating value, and that value is specific to its culture. Just like each economic system shouldn't be considered and can't really be fully considered outside of its cultural context. The same goes with value and money, okay? So if value itself is culturally constructed, then so are our symbolic representations of value, because currency and money are nothing but symbolic representations of value. That piece of paper that's not actually paper that we call money is just a symbol of value. Okay, so that has to be culturally constructed and specific to a culture, just like value is. So money is going to be any substance or objects that serves as payment for goods and services. Okay, and then currency are objects that are used as a medium of exchange. Okay, and that can be anything. So you can have paper money, coins, you can have precious metals like gold or silver, you can have things like cattle, you can have shells, you can have pretty much any object can be turned into a form of currency or money, right? And so as anthropologists, we are going to be focusing on the cultural dimensions of money as well as the economic. So not just looking at patterns of wealth and money, but also looking at the cultural dimensions of that. So how are those symbols formed? How are those relationships recreated and maintained through time? And things like that. So we have two different types of money. We have general purpose money and limited purpose money. And so general purpose money can be used to buy nearly any good or service. Okay, and so that makes mobility very important, because I can buy anything with general purpose money. I need to be able to take that money places, right? I need to be able to take it to the guy who has the cattle, so I can buy the cattle from him with that general purpose money. So there still exists some limits. It's much more broad than limited purpose money. You can use it to buy nearly anything or everything, but there do exist some limits, like we talked about in the beginning of the lecture there. Okay, limited purpose money. So objects can only be exchanged for certain things, and they're very limited, like the name would suggest, in that let's say paper can only be exchanged for coffee, and coffee then can only be exchanged for food. This is not a real example. This is just completely random objects, but the point is that you could never exchange paper for food. You would have to exchange paper for coffee, then coffee for food. Okay, so if we want to talk about that in terms of an example, we have the Tiv Pastoralis of Nigeria. Okay, and so your bride price is paid for with cattle, while cattle are paid for with brass rods. Okay, so money isn't used for subsistence. It's used really just to gain access to goods that can provide social status or respect. Okay, and so this is an example of limited exchange. Okay, because you can't pay your bride price with brass rods, you can only pay it with cattle, but you can only acquire cattle through exchange with brass rods. Okay, that's an example of limited purpose. Okay, but just like we have kind of moral codes about what we can and can't purchase, the same is true of Tiv Pastoralis and of limited purpose systems. Okay, so they have, in their specific culture, three spheres of exchange. And so spheres of exchange are just bounded values, orders of value in which certain goods can only be exchanged for others. So you can't exchange outside of your sphere. Okay, so they are ordinary subsistence goods, they're prestige goods, and then there are rights and people. So these would be women or slaves. So these are the three spheres of exchange. Okay, and you can only exchange within those things. There's specific morals related to each one, and then also the exchange of them. And so a problem occurred when general purpose money was introduced to the system. So an outside economic system kind of came in on top of their limited purpose system with money, with cash that theoretically could be used to purchase anything. And so it undermined this system of very specific moral codes about what can and cannot be purchased. Okay, and so this isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just that these economic systems were reinforcing that these economic systems are tied very strongly to moral and cultural issues. And so changing the economic system will actually change the morality and culture of a community. And remember, that's called a linked change. Another piece of anthropological investigations of the economy that's very similar to spheres of exchange are called transactional orders. And these are realms of transactions that a community uses, and each realm has its own symbolic meanings and moral assumptions. Okay, so this is best explained through an example. There's a fishing community in Malaysia that has a very strong emphasis on morality and kinship and reciprocity. And so that's what their economy is strongly based on, as well as their culture in general. Okay, but there's also the marketplace. And so the marketplace for them is amoral. And a symbol of the marketplace is money, or cash money. And so the money is seen as amoral. So usually they're being reciprocal exchange based instead of monetary based. And so these two realms of transactions, reciprocity and buying things with money, are separate. And one is good, the reciprocity, and one is amoral, which would be the money or the marketplace. And so the people there are very wary of money because it lives in this amoral order or realm of the marketplace. Okay, and so they've kind of come up with a cultural way to deal with this amoral nature of money. And so the men will sell their fish for money, but they can only use that money or engage with that money once it's been held by a woman, and because the women are seen as cleansing. Okay, and so women provide an additional third domain in which money changes from this short-term, very competition-based symbol of the amoral marketplace, and it changes to a long-term family obligation. It's being held by the women. It's in their control essentially for that time period, and it's switching from this amoral bad thing to this clean, useful object that is now part of their system of family obligation and kinship and reciprocity.